Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Marketing Guides for Small Business podcast. I'm Ian Cantle, and I'm joined here by our panel of marketing guides. We've got Dan, Jen, Ken, and Paul. And excited today because we're joined by two great guests to our show. We have Lisa Staff and Deevo. And they join us from Sprout Connections, a full service creative agency with a focus on social media management and content storytelling. Both Lisa and Deevo are accomplished photographers and entrepreneurs who have been growing their voice through their own podcast called The Mind Body Business Show that explores central topics to the human race and the planet as a whole. I love that. They believe in the power of the human spirit, innovation, and they like to push the bubble on information dissemination, highlighting all the wonderful things others are doing with their superpowers. I love that, guys, and welcome to today's show.
Thanks for having us.
Today, we're going to explore the topic of how small businesses can leverage photo, video, and storytelling to build their own brand story. So welcome, Lisa and Deevo, for joining us today. And I'm going to start off with a question for you. How does storytelling fit into branding and marketing for small businesses?
Lisa, you want to go first?
Well, I'll start out, and I think storytelling in humanity, in our lives, in families, I think Deevo probably's told me a few stories when we met, and maybe that was engaging, and that's how we got to where we are. You know, that's how people in our community, whether it's social media or in real life, not that social media is not real life, but that's how you tell your secret sauce. That's how you get to the heart and soul of who you are and differentiate yourself from just a website. You know, what makes you different? What's your social proof? Deevo, I don't know if you want to run with that.
Yeah, everything you said is fantastic. I think at the crux of what we do as business owners, whether you're in big business or small business, everybody's looking for somebody they can connect with and sell their product to, or something that resonates with someone. And so buyers are looking for products, or looking for personalities, or looking for people that they can sort of see a slice of them in themselves, or something that they want to aspire to become, or a product that adds some sort of leverage to their life in one way or another. And so any way that you can tell the story that resonates with your ideal buyer about your brand, you're going to have a more compelling message. It helps you attract new leads. It helps you amplify your brand's reach across different channels. You build these emotional connections with your audience that you wouldn't have been able to do had you not told a story about why your brand is uniquely positioned for them to use that or sell it to them, et cetera. So it's literally everything that you do in branding and marketing at the crux of things.
Mm-hmm. And I think we talked a little bit before, Deevo and I, about likening it to that hot girl or that handsome guy that, you know, you see them, the first response that you have to them is, oh, they're really good looking. And then you have a conversation and there's no personality, there's nothing else there. And then that relationship doesn't last, does it? Unless you can have that conversation or tell that story, there's no substance there.
Yeah, but can I also add to that, if I may? So that lack of connection between Lisa and that boring guy who couldn't tell a story might not have been the same for me. For example, I might have found that stoic person to be right up my alley. So the whole point of storytelling is to find that voice, find that niche, find that purpose, find that compelling message that resonates with your counterpart, if you will, or your buyer, if you will, or that mate you might find. Lisa might find unscintillating, but I found completely compelling because that's sort of my vibe. Does that make sense? So that's different for everybody. Not to say that Lisa's more exciting or I'm less exciting. It's just, again, everybody has a different reason why they come to the marketplace. It's our job as branders, it's our job as business owners to find what ticks in everybody's box and speak to that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm not wooed by a pretty face. So are you saying that I'm more, like, you're like, I'm into all the esoteric stuff and tell me that story, but Lisa's going to just show her some fashion. She'll be happy.
No, I said I liked boring people. That's what I said.
But yeah, you know, we have to figure out who we're telling our story to, don't we? You know, yeah. That whole selling to everyone, you're selling to no one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. With storytelling, I mean, it is important. So I don't know if you guys have had clients that just kind of feel like, I'm not sure if I have such an interesting story What do you do in that type of situation?
We don't take them on as clients.
Unless they're interesting, right?
There's something that we do within our business that I think is really the best starting point, because most people don't know, what are they doing that's different? What are they doing that's intriguing or interesting? There's nothing that I do that's interesting. I'm boring, whatever. And I think too, when you have that superpower, that secret sauce that you do, you just assume that everyone else can do it, or they do it in the same way, and it's perfectly normal, but it's not normal. It's what you do, and it's your superpower. We do a branding exercise. Deevo is head of that, and he quarantines himself off with clients for hours on end and sits them in a chair with a light bulb above them and asks them really important questions, and then comes out with this amazing document that tells all about all the great things that they do and all the things that they can share. So you probably want to talk a little bit more about that. It's actually not that that traumatic.
Well, I think it goes back to my last point. I think that we all have, and you've heard this is not an original term. I don't know who coined it, but everybody has this sort of imposter syndrome. Why me? Like, there's other people out there who are more interesting than I. But, I saw a movie recently with my kids. I think it's an older movie. It's called Dinner with Schmucks. And I forget the name of the lead character. He's from The Office. But his shtick is that he takes roadkill mice and he converts them into these live kind of living creatures, these little dioramas, and they're all in these living situations. And sort of all of us are sort of like that. We all have these quirks and these little tendencies and these little subtleties and these little nuances that make us human, right? And there are other people just like us that share those same composites that we share. And so we may not be able to connect with everyone on the planet. We may not be able to connect with everyone in our sphere of influence per se, but there are people that do care about the things that we care about. So our job as marketers, our job as content creators and branders and business owners is to find those people who like to pick up roadkill and convert them into something fancy and cute. Well, I say that, but it's true. Like, everybody has something that they're uniquely good at. Ian has a fantastic radio voice. Dave maybe is really good at landscaping. Jen, you're really fantastic at leading CEOs around entrepreneurship. Like, everybody has something they're really good at, and your business was built upon that foundation, right? And so our job is to find those things that we're really, really good at, that we give fucks about, and to share our personal version of that with people who might be interested in that as well. We're not trying to cater or market to everyone. We're trying to find a very specific slice of humanity that wants our product, because then you build compelling tribe members.
I think that's that's one of the best things about what you do, what we do, is that exactly we don't have to necessarily attract everyone and anyone, and I think that's where the voice that you guys have for storytelling and some of us, I think it's very distinct, and the more distinct it is, I think it's just better for new business, isn't it? I mean, I think that's where you just happen to attract the right people and repel the wrong people, and that's what I get out of it.
Well, it's also very expensive to try to attract everybody.
Yeah.
You can't.
Well, yes, of course, yeah, that too. But that's the thing. I don't know. I mean, it took me a long time to realize this, but I did create and tell stories and content like I was trying to attract everyone and not piss off this person or that person. And while I might talk about, trying to niche here or there, the content, the story didn't have that voice for that reason. And it was watered down. And I think that's where, having a clear side of the spectrum means everything.
Well,
Yeah, I think.
Easier,
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go
I was
ahead.
just
You
gonna
had.
say, it's easier to be in a monogamous relationship than dating everyone, isn't it? So it's like creating that relationship that you're going to have with those people that you want to connect with, and trying to be a different person to each one. It would be exhausting to date multiple people at the same time.
Yes.
That's a good analogy, because when I first started dating, after I had gotten divorced, I started dating about a year later. And you sort of go out with these different people, whatever your frequency is. Mine was, maybe one date or so every 2 weeks. But every person that you met had this different personality and different take on life. And you sort of find yourself chameleonizing to engage in a conversation with them. And then you go home and you're like, fuck, that was exhausting. I was just small talking the whole time. I wasn't really talking about the things that I wanted to talk about. And then when you meet somebody that you can just be yourself with and talk about the shit that really matters to you, it's like fireworks go off inside you, right? And you have like those emotions where you just want to talk all the time and you can't wait to see them again. And so when you can find that voice that you're really passionate about and you're very purposeful about, and you start talking about that, and I hate the word authentic, but in that genuine, authentic way, without fear of sort of censoring yourself and without having that imposter syndrome of like, who's going to care about this? You just start doing it. And you'll find that very quickly people start latching onto it. And it sort of becomes like this compounding, cascading snowball that just keeps building and building and building.
And it's not the surface level. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, please.
It's just not those surface level conversations anymore, right? You can go deeper. You can go deeper into what your secret sauce is and create that bond that you need with people. People are interested in things you never think that they would be interested in. We all, there's reality TV is like 50% of what's on TV now, right? People want to see what makes it tick behind the scenes. They want to see The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, all of those shows. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think that's where I don't know. Really, in the last few years, I think now with, at least for me, with the pandemic and kind of being cooped up a little bit, I think it lends itself to us being more out there than we ever have been as storytellers. It's like, okay, we can't go into an office, we can't congregate with people, we can't necessarily go to coffee shops and other places, depending on where we live. So for me, I don't know about you guys, but I think that's where it sort of makes you roar a little bit more than you ever have, just because it's just you in this one place, this one office. And you're like, damn it, I want to be heard a little bit more. And I feel a little frustrated getting cooped up in here. And I think I want to build that tribe that you're referring to. And I don't know, again, maybe perhaps that's just me, but I just noticed that happening a lot in the last, year and a half or so.
I for one, I don't disagree with anything you said. It's been compounded because of that. But even pre-COVID, the internet and social media in general has democratized marketing. It's made this sort of closed box of 7.5 billion people that we now can freely speak to if we find the right voice, right? There's 7.5 billion people on the planet. We have an opportunity to engage with somebody out there. I've got followers from Russia all the way across Eastern Europe, all the way down to South America that DM me and engage with me. Lisa has the same on a regular basis. And social media has given us that platform to do that at a relatively low cost. It's our time and our energy and our resources, of course. But if we can figure out a way to talk about what are the things that matter to us and what we're doing in business or what we're doing in life and connect with other people, it allows us to just reach a global audience we'd have never had the opportunity to do before.
Mm-hmm.
Can I just ask you who's reaching out to you from Russia and what do they want from you?
Well, I do get proposed to on a regular basis by mail order brides.
Intel, what's going on with Russia?
Yep, no doubt.
But I think we all agree probably that it has elevated our business. We've reached out and been able to connect with people that, whether it's on a personal basis, whether it's something that you either partner with them, implement something in their business, you're able to scale something with them. It's increased the opportunities within our own personal businesses, hasn't it?
Mm-hmm. I'd like to give you a perfect example of that. So Lisa, I just found out about this yesterday. So Lisa and I both have a business coach, and one of her clients reached out to me over DM because I had posted something on Instagram about how we go about crafting a story and finding our purpose and our je ne sais quoi and our raison d'etre. And I was using all these fancy words to impress people that I'm smart, right? And he sent me a message and he had copied and pasted something from his website, and it had some of those same words in it. At first I was like, wait, is somebody plagiarizing me or did I plagiarize someone else? But it turns out that he makes jewelry, and his whole his whole framework around making jewelry is he gets to know his clients first and foremost so that he can understand what it is they do and what it is they like and what it is that makes them tick, understanding all of their little subtleties and nuances, their story, right? And then he crafts these custom pieces of jewelry, and he saw a post that we had done, and he just wanted to reach out and say, hey man, I just really love what you had written there. It's sort of what we do. I think it's fantastic. Would you be interested in doing some sort of a collaboration with me? Yada, yada, yada. And now we have a new opportunity where Lisa and I could potentially be wearing his jewelry in exchange for, talking about what he did for us and how it was created. And that's literally the power of the internet right now. It's that democratization of everybody having access to everyone else.
Yeah, so I look at story maybe a little bit differently, maybe not, but I usually think about the problem that my client solves for their prospective customers, and and you've got to stimulate curiosity and generate enlightenment before that customer is going to say, you know what, I'm ready to make a commitment in this relationship and move forward. That's right out of Story Brand. I'm a Story Brand uh, person big time. I'm also a Business Made Simple coach. So this is kind of the way I look at the world. And I think it also aligns up really well with search engine optimization, where people are finding you. And when they find you, they got to get on your website. They got to clearly understand exactly what it is you do. And that's usually going to be around solving a problem and addressing the internal fears that they have. So, I'd love to hear, what your guys, perspective is on that kind of thinking, and how small businesses can use storytelling really to kind of capture a prospect's attention and really kind of get them into the buyer's journey to the point where they're ready to make that commitment and do business with the business.
I'll just start out shortly and just say how many touch points do people need now before they actually make that business decision to go with you? Like it was a few before, now it's like 1,000. Probably not 1,000, probably like 17. But you need to keep getting out there. You need to show up. You need to be consistent, and you need to show that story. And honestly, how many of us are interested in something that doesn't have anything in it for us? We're selfish people. We want what's in it for me. What value does it have for me? So you're absolutely right. We need to show up. We need to show those things that are going to have value. If I'm following someone, there's something in it for me, whether it's social media and I'm following because I want someone that's funny. I want to laugh. I'm going to go to a certain site. If I want to have like some intellectual thought leadership, I'm going to follow someone because that's what I'm expecting for them. But there has to be something in it, and it has to be consistently giving value.
Mm-hmm. I love Lisa's response there. The only piece I would add to that is, you do have 7.5 billion people doing the same thing. And in that sea of sameness, how can you differentiate what you're doing? Nobody wants to be sold to. Like, we all hate it. You go buy a car, you walk into a shop where there's the overt salesperson trying to get, nobody wants to be sold to anymore. And it's because I can literally swipe my thumb and find someone doing the exact same thing and have a different value proposition that they might have than one of you or one of us might have. And so as you're scrolling through your social media, or you're visiting websites, or you're doing the physical thing, shopping in a store, everybody's looking for, like Lisa said, what's in it for me? What can I get out of this? What's the value of this product? And because nobody wants to be sold to, we use storytelling to tell and craft a story that would leverage our take on the world, our value propositions, the things that we're really good at. And we use storytelling to leverage that to find people who would line up with those same orientations, those same goals, those same objectives. So, and because there's so many different people you mentioned you were a coach. There are 6 million coaches right now. Photographers, you can Google photographers in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the search results are, I think, a couple thousand now. Only like a handful of them are actually real photographers. Most of them just went down to Best Buy and bought a camera, and they're now suddenly a photographer. So, but the general consumer doesn't know that, right? They're just looking for the best deal. Sometimes they're looking for something that stands out, right? And so it's our job as marketers to stand out in that sea of sameness. And the only way we can do that is by consistently telling what we do, why we do it, how we do it, with very strategic purpose. And that's how we leverage the ideation of storytelling to connect with people.
Yeah, I think it's.
Sorry, go ahead.
I mean, I think there's a lot of buyer motivation baked inside of their internal problem. The way they look at the world. An easy example is, first of all, we have to recognize. I mean, every type of business is going to have a different customer journey. I mean, if you're a restaurant, it's radically different than if you're buying a, $500,000 piece of software to run your business. For example. But if you're a patient and you've got a toothache, that's the external problem. You're going to be looking for a dentist. The dentist that you're likely to pick is probably going to be somebody that addresses that internal problem or that internal fear that you have. Like, you know, every time I go to the dentist, it just hurts, or they have a horrible bedside manner. And so you want to connect with somebody that addresses that internal problem that you're not expressing typically, and they need to use their story to communicate that, yeah, we get it. This is how we help you solve that problem.
Absolutely.
And this isn't going away. Social media, the internet, it's not a fad. It's not going away. So we need to get comfortable with it, and our clients need to get comfortable with it as well. And I think there's so many times that we're finished the branding, we're discussing with clients what we think they should be doing as they move ahead, what's the best and easiest way to facilitate and to tell their story. And usually they're so uncomfortable with it. Oh, I don't like speaking in front of people. I don't like doing this. But the thing is, they're speaking about the one thing that they don't even really need to think about. It just comes so easily, and the ability for them to do that and connect with people is right there. So they need to be able to show up consistently and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and then it'll start to flow as well. Sometimes people just need that little bit of a push, because this is the only way to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean the internet's not going away? We're not going back to phone books?
The World Wide Web.
Now, Ian had mentioned that you're both accomplished photographers, but most people aren't, although everyone does have a smartphone in their pocket. But for those that aren't good with pictures, video, how can they go about starting to use that in their business, especially video? That seems to be the big hang up. Taking a picture isn't that big of a deal, but getting a business to use video in their marketing strategy seems to be a big problem. So how would they get started?
There's a few different ways. And first of all, everybody's a photographer and everybody has an iPhone. Everybody's doing it, but yes, it's not always good. And sometimes, I'm going to put out a shameless plug, sometimes you need to find out, stay in your lane, find out what your forte is, and hire someone to help you with some of the things that you fall short on. But for lack of not being able to do that, there's different potential streams of content that you can create. And a lot of things now, if it's just going in your stories, it's up for 24 hours. If you're doing something on Instagram, it's short, test it out, see what works, document instead of, you don't need to make a motion picture. And there was the switch with Instagram with them saying, oh, now it's like a video platform, and that stresses everyone out. Well, it's the same as it's always been. We just need to show up and we need to create video. Deevo had a really great opportunity with a client that we have that's just gone to the Serengeti, and she wasn't able to hire a team of hire us to go with her or anyone else to do video and create content and assets for her. But do you want to talk a little bit about that?
I think you're doing great. Continue on. I'll plug in where I need it.
Well, sorry, it's all about me. You set up a document for her of all the assets so she could get in her mind what she needed to create. Because I think a lot of times what we do is we get out, we do what we do, we get to the end of it, and we're like, oh, I should have captured something with that. I should have taken the incentive, the initiative to document that, to set up a camera, put something on a stand, and video what we're doing. That great opportunity is past. So you set up a great document that kind of went into all the things that we needed her to come back with assets. You also gave her a fabulous tool to take with her that was basically could fit in her pocket. She could video, she could do everything with it. And you walked her through exactly how to use it. So I think if you can dumb it down, simplify it, set up these are the guidelines. This is what has to come into place. This becomes your habit, your ritual of what you do, and be mindful of it before you even start.
I think at the bedrock of everything Lisa just said is that it's all about social media used to be about having these perfectly crafted images and these perfectly crafted social stories and these perfectly beautiful, and you have all these social media influencers out there who have like straight A10 bodies and perfect faces and putting filters all over themselves, and none of that's realistic, but because people are basically dumb by nature, they're like, I want to look just like that, right? And so, and I'm me included, like we see things and we're like, oh, I want that. That's marketing at the crux. Like, touch on the trigger points you talked about earlier, like what are my trouble points and how can they be solved? Marketing solves that for people because they see something that resonated with them. They want to be skinnier, they want to be fitter, they want to be more beautiful, they want to have bigger breasts, nicer ass, whatever it is, and that's marketing touches on those things, right? But at the crux of all of that is purpose. But as social media has become more and more popular and more people are doing their selfies and showing their stories, it's sort of become this artifact collection game where it's not so much about curating perfect content now, it's more about documenting your story with some purpose. And so what we did with our client was we just asked her to think about if we were charging you with telling your story to us every single day, how might you do that on a daily basis? And that starts with waking up in the morning and what's big on your day. Well, today she's going to lead a team of CEOs that are millionaires and billionaires across the Serengeti to go into these entanglements with lions and jungle beasts and doing all these things where there's this intersection of blood and wine. And I'm like, it's a fantastic story. You should talk about that. Like, what did you do today? What's on the agenda today? And throughout the day, pick up your recorder that we gave you that's really relatively innocuous and no one's going to think you're being this narcissistic prick by taking selfies all day long, and just talk about the things that are doing today. And those stories will connect with people. And so how we
Deevo, we lost your audio. If you can hear us.
Uh-oh.
You were getting really passionate too.
Yeah, it was good.
It was so animated.
I enjoyed it.
I love it. I think it was like a censorship thing. He was probably dropping some spicy words again. It just blurted it out.
Can't hit the delay.
Over to you, Lisa.
Oh, we're doing charades now. I think as well, being mindful of again who you're speaking to, because it's a little overwhelming. It's a little overwhelming to me. I'm not a 20-year-old anymore, and I don't want to do TikTok dances. I don't want to be doing the reels where I'm pointing and doing all those crazy things. It just kind of gives me the hives. But knowing who you're speaking to, knowing that you've already been authentic as to this is what I do, this is my niche, I'm comfortable with talking about all the things I do in behind the scenes, and do what feels right as well. It doesn't mean that you need to jump on the shiniest, new toy again and do the dancing, unless you're comfortable with it.
One of the things I wanted to ask you guys about, it's a big subjective word called quality. I'm a big believer in content creation, and sometimes, though, a little dismayed by the quality of content, let's say, that I see people putting out. And I don't know that, frankly, everybody knows what might be considered high quality and what might not be considered high quality. And again, there's a lot of different opinions on that. You can go all over the place. But just, to get the ball rolling, I think, what I have seen, for what it's worth, is a lot of inward-looking stuff that I would not consider quality. And what I mean by that is, literally this week, it seems like, I don't know if this is the debate du jour on LinkedIn, but it's about self-promotion and how much self-promotion is too much and all that. And when I think about quality content, I do think people tend to go off the rails on self-promotion and say a lot of stuff that, frankly, none of us give a crap about. After the first or second time, I get that you wrote a book, but I probably don't need to know about it 45 times in a row. So what kinds of things have you seen as shining examples of quality content, different content, of whether it's stuff that you guys are doing or things out there in the marketplace that you just think, wow, that really speaks well of the brand?
I don't know if we have sound from Deevo, do we?
I'm back.
Oh, welcome back.
Excellent. I think there's, and Deevo's probably going to touch on this. We actually did a podcast on quality and quantity and the benefits of either, and how, you know, we do need to practice our craft to get to a certain experience and to have that quality. And it takes a lot. But there's a point where we don't want to be selling to people. I think we've all been on social media lately, and everybody's talking about they only work 2 hours a week and they make 7 figures and they do this and this and this. And it gets a little exhausting. And, you know, you unfollow those people. You don't want to hear it anymore. So it's kind of, again, reading the room and knowing who you're speaking to. It does get, again, it would be like likening that to a person that's always talking about, you know, them being a superstar at football when they were 18, and this is 30 years later and nobody wants to hear about it anymore. Tell me what you're doing now and tell me what's in it for me. I think a lot of it too is you need to know what's your brand, what's your business, what are they expecting, and how is that melding together to tell your story. And if you are just selling, like, again, there needs to be value there for whoever's following. It needs to be entertaining in some way. There needs to be a takeaway. You have to keep giving.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I think so. I think we should back up for a second, because everybody, you need to first understand your context within the marketplace of the delivery of your message. So are you on, and again, if we're talking about the vessel being social media, which I think for the sake of conversation we will, but marketing in of itself, since it's predominated by social media now, understanding your context of the delivery of your message is really critical. Because if you're a social media influencer and really the only purpose you're on social media is to self-aggrandize and show about how good you are, there are people that are going to follow that. Like, we know for a fact that people are somehow, for some reason, drawn to whatever it is you're doing behind the scenes, Jen. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, people give a shit about it. I can't explain it. People follow my personal stories more than they follow my brilliant photography from time to time. So I think the first piece is understand the context of your delivery and who your audience is. If you're in here to and that's the purpose of being on social media and self-aggrandizing and showing yourself in bikinis or half naked and running across the beach on a horse, like, if that's your thing and people resonate with it, then continue doing it. Like, if you're picking up brands and marketing for it, why would you change your recipe? But if you're a brand like me, and I don't have a perfect body and I'm not a perfect face, and I'm not going to put on a bikini and hang upside down in a yoga pose on a bridge, then I need to find what the context of my delivery is. And for me, my secret sauce has been more of about kind of, I talk about my photographs, but I talk about the stories within the photographs. I talk about the things that brought me to the delivery of that photograph. I don't ever say, hey, I'm a photographer, buy from me, or hey, I'm the best photographer, you should only book me. I tell stories about my clients. I talk about the things that I connected with them on. I talk about the things that were important to me about a photograph. I talk about why I stopped on the side of the road and stopped all traffic on a bridge so that I could get the perfect sunset shot with a client in the middle of Brooklyn. It's just, those are the things that make my brand work. What makes your brand work might be completely different. I think the first thing that should be really touched on here is that we reverse that paradigm on quality. Quality is important, but it's the quantity of the repetition of your engaging that leads to the quality in the first place. So if we can find a way to be repetitious and consistent and have purpose around what we're doing, inherently the quality will take care of itself. That doesn't mean you put out shit. That means you need to be purposeful about it. But your version of quality is going to be completely different of what my version is. That's just what it is. If you ask my mom, everything I put out is literally a superstardom. But Lisa ridicules me last week for a post I put out. She's like, that's really not your message. You really shouldn't be talking about that sort of stuff. I asked my mom, and she's like, oh, Debbie, you're just beautiful. You're amazing. Like, everything you do is perfect. And I'm like, Mom, you're delusional. But but you see where I'm going with here. Like, if you can figure out what your context is, and if you understand your brand essence, which is the soul of what you do, if you understand the purpose, which everybody uses your why, if you understand what value and problem you're solving, and you set out to create content that follows that, you can very quickly learn to create a good photograph using lighting and composition and all those different things. But if you understand why and who and what you're talking to, your quality sort of will intrinsically take care of itself.
You know, I think that's a really good point, because what constitutes quality, if I'm looking If I want to know how to hang a window frame, replace a window frame, quality to me in that case is going to be the more detailed it is, and I can follow the instructions and do it properly. That's quality. And that's all that matters in that case.
And I think what I would also say on just to put a point on it is, the thing that is hard for some people to do is, I said this yesterday, I said, a lot of people are really good at showing the pretty, but not the gritty. And that means, I can't even tell you how many webinars, books, whatever on leadership are out there. But I believe every single one of them is BS if they only show, here's what you need to do to be a leader. And I never went through anything bad.
Mm-hmm.
I never went through anything bad as an entrepreneur. Now here's the 10 things that will make you a success. That is such garbage, and it's misleading, and it's not truthful. So I think when you have that authenticity going on, and it's hard. I mean, it's hard to bring up the tough stuff. But to what you guys are saying, I think it's like, isn't that the more real, authentic thing that attracts the people you want? And that's kind of where I think you guys are going with some of this stuff.
No, absolutely. I think you need to trust the feedback that you get as well. We will, say if we're talking about photography, we will post an image that we think is the best image, the lighting, the context, the subject, what you did to get that final image, all the work in post-production that you did on it, and it falls flat and you don't get it. I can post a picture, and I'm going to get flack for this, of Deevo and I together, and I'll get all these comments and all these likes and all these, and you're just like, really? But you need to trust some of that feedback, don't you? You put it out there, you look at your analytics, you see what people are saying, and then you just kind of tweak things a little bit. And again, when you were talking about, there's so many people that are just selling so hard, but you just need to listen, and think about how you react to things. There's so many things that I have, I'm going to give them my email address, and I give them my email address, and I'm getting 3 emails a day from them forever until I unsubscribe. So, it's just trust your gut on some things too.
I just unsubscribed from 3 different things today because of that reason.
Right.
It's too much.
You are so needy. Just step off.
Hey guys, we've been talking about storytelling as the business, so telling our story and trying to create a story that resonates with the people we want to connect with. How about storytelling from our customers' point of view? Meaning, what's the best way a business can leverage, case studies, whether they're video, photo, written, testimonials, that kind of stuff, where they say it's always better to have someone tell how great you are rather than yourself, because it's more authentic, right? A real customer is talking about the difference you made in their life. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think you're spot on about that. I think the best way to go about that is to have a diversified portfolio of how you're going to tell your story. It doesn't always have to be you on your cell phone. It doesn't always have to be you dropping knowledge about how great you are. I think if you can diversify the things that you're doing and somehow use storytelling to drop a hook, build a juxtaposition, solve a problem, share how you did it, why you did it, what was the story behind it, what were the struggles that you have, and being able to tell those stories because we're fortunate enough or unfortunate enough, depending upon your perspective, we live in this comparative world, and social media has just magnified that, right? So everybody sort of wants to see what you're doing so that they can see that version of it in themselves, right? And whether it's good, I'm better than you, or that person's doing it way better than me, I suck, whatever it is, that's still a storyline that people will follow. So if we can find a way to craft our messages and build our audience by connecting with them through, you talked about sharing failures. I did a video last week on, I received my first negative review in the history of my business. And the reason I received it was because, well, you can watch the video. In fact, I'm going to make you watch the video. But it was from my perspective, it was an invalid reason for getting a bad review. So I told my story about that. And it resonated with a lot of business owners. I got a lot of people who were commenting and sending me DMs and being like how grateful they were that I just sort of dropped some knowledge on stuff that wasn't perfect about my business. And so there's all sorts of different ways you can do it. But at the crux of it is how can you find a way to drop a hook of your story, build that context, or I call it that juxtaposition? What problem did you struggle with? How did you potentially solve that problem? Or did you not solve that problem? And then like Lisa touched on, I love that point you just made, Lisa. How can you engage your audience so that they can get involved in the conversation? Don't talk at people. Talk to people. Let them be part of the conversation. Share your insights. Ask them for their insights. And all of that's when you start doing that conversation around the campfire back when we were wearing sloth clothes and saber-toothed tiger pelts around our body parts, we sat around a fire and we talked about things, and that's how humans came together, and we connected and we shared stories, and one tribe after the next started doing it, and before you know it, we're in the 21st century traveling in space. Like, it's all around storytelling and bringing other people into that fire with you.
And I think when you're showing some behind the scenes and some video and things like that, all of a sudden that client becomes the superhero in it. All of a sudden, like, people are sometimes off-put. They're like, I'm not going to feel comfortable if we're talking about photography or video. Nobody wants to be in front of the camera. Everybody's like, I hate getting my pictures taken. But when they see other people that are in that limelight and loving it and laughing and having fun or stepping up and rising to the occasion, that switches the perspective on it, that they too can be that superhero as well doing it.
That is a brilliant point, Lise. If you don't make it about yourself, which one of you were talking about earlier, that aggrandizing piece, like, we're tired of hearing about how perfect you are. Make it about your audience. Let them, there's a bunch of, if you look at the most successful brands in the world right now, they're using other personas to share their story. They're not sharing their story. They're allowing other people to share their story. I photographed I'm not going to talk about names, but I photographed an escort recently, and she has really low self-esteem. We're going to leave it at that. But she wanted to start having, she hired me to create content so that she could attract a higher end audience. She was getting sort of like not the type of people that she wanted to be doing business. I don't know if I'm supposed to, is this a G-rated or a PG-13 show?
Well, you've dropped some bombs already.
Elevated us.
Yeah.
So anyhow, make a long story short, I just finished photographing her, did a bunch of work with her, video and photos. And I did not take the salacious approach with her. I took the more sophisticated approach with her. And I took this sort of idea of creating her as this sort of like really sophisticated, if you want to work with me, you have to be sort of a big deal type of approach. Well, anyway, I gave her a sneak peek of a photo 2 nights ago, and she has shared it with like whomever is in her circle. I don't know who operates in those circles, but I've already had 2 other people that work in that space with her contact me because they want to look like that. They want that same story. And so the whole point of it is if we, like Lisa said, if you can empower your clients by showcasing them in a different light than they see themselves, you're going to build an audience that really, really loves what you do. And that at the crux of it, that's what branding and marketing really is to me.
And that's how we get most of our clients, isn't it? It's
through an escort business?
No, not so much. Through word of mouth, through recommends. Someone's like, wow, I can't believe you made that person look good. What can you do for me? Right?
One of the things that all of us on the panel end up doing in our business, we're all marketing consultants, and we work often with the business owner of the business that we're doing the marketing work for. Sometimes, the business owner wants to step away from their story, and not necessarily in a good way, in a kind of shiny object kind of way. And, all of us are trying to bring the client back and say, you've got a great differentiator here. Your story is great. And sometimes what we hear is, well, I'm tired of telling my own story. And, they just think that they forget that they're living with their business and their story 365 days a year. And the people that really need to hear it and resonate with it aren't. And so you have to get your story out there and be repetitive about it and consistent about it. Have you come across this? And if you have, what do you say to the folks that, might tire of their own story a little too early than the potential marketplace has?
I'm trying to think if we've had any clients that have been in that situation yet.
I think there's a lot of people who have different gradients of that. I think everybody has a different sort of tolerance level for how narcissistic they quote unquote want to appear, right? I think it goes back to, it was question number 3. Someone asked about, how can people show up? And it's really, and I think this is where I got muted. It's really don't expect perfection. There's no such thing, but there is a process. And if you can just get involved in the process and find different and unique ways to tell your story, it doesn't always have to be about you front and center. Maybe there's employees in your business line that have cool stories. Maybe there's customers that have really cool stories that you had an impact on. Maybe talking about those. And I think if you can diversify that space so that they don't feel like they're under the microscope being interviewed 24/7, and talk about, we call these pillars of purpose in our story, right? So every one of our clients, Lisa talked about our discovery process. Sorry, shameless plug. But we find that it's not so much that people don't necessarily want to talk about themselves. Of course, you do have those people, but I think a lot of people don't know what to talk about because they just sort of, this is what they do for a living. Like, who cares about how I make plastic widgets every single day? Well, maybe you don't see that story, but if you can understand the different pieces that go into what made your business, and diversifying that with some personal stories, some employee stories, some different struggles that you encounter, and finding different pillars of purpose, and then filling those pillars in with storylines for each one, then once people start to get the hook of it, you're just basically training your brain through repetitious activity, right? And once you start getting involved in that repetitious activity, it sort of just becomes second nature. And the next thing you know, you're pulling out your camera to talk about a story while you drive into your next business meeting because you're sweating bullets because it's a 6-figure business and you don't want to F up. So you're telling that story. And the next thing you know, you're posting it on your storyline and people are sending you messages like, holy shit, I have the same thing every day. I don't know how to talk in front of people, but I saw your post and I was inspired. So if you can do it, I can do it. And that's just really what it's all about.
We've kind of talked about this a lot, I think, in threads throughout all of our conversations today. But, I see a real common problem with a lot of businesses that just post. And you guys talk about, posting with a purpose or having a pillar of purpose. What guidance can you provide to our listeners, to really kind of focus their efforts, as they're creating content, as they're, creating, the imagery or the videos that kind of tell their story? What do you guys have for that?
I'm going to say quick and dirty. Have a plan. Sit down, make it part of your schedule, and put some thought and planning into it and schedule it out. Don't be posting on the fly when, like Deevo talking about driving. Don't be posting while you're driving just so you can throw something up. It's better not to put something up and be intentional about it and have a plan about it. Figure out what those pillars are and touch on all of those. You can plan your schedule out for the month if you need to and be done with it, but then everything is going to be quality that you're putting out there.
I would say grow a garden. Your garden has this diversified elements to it, right? It's not just a one-time thing. You have to nurture it. You have to plant seeds. You have to till the soil. You have to pull out the weeds. You have to put in fertilizer. And you have all these different type of plants. If you look at, farmers who are really successful farmers, they have to diversify the soil every year. They have to take time off from the soil and plant different crops so that the soil can be renutrified, et cetera. And if you can use that analogy for your marketing and your branding and your social media or whatever vessel it is that you're using, have a diversified perspective. Instagram, just at the crux of it, you've got 10 different ways you can tell different versions of your story. You can go live. You can do lives with other people. You can post boomerangs. You can post stories. You can do IGTVs. You can post feeds. You can do reels. There's all these different ways. And each one of those ways has their own unique context and delivery mechanism. So you can take one story and slice that up into 7 different vegetables for your garden and present that in a completely different way to your audience that might consume it differently. I know some people who never look at my feed. They only look at my stories. I know some people who don't give 2 damns about anything on my Instagram. They just want to see me do reels. I have some audience, they only want to see my articles that we write on LinkedIn. So you have to think of your social media and your marketing, your branding as your garden. How can you diversify it so you're not just just eating tomatoes every day. Give people a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and play with the different tools at your disposal. And don't be afraid to experiment and fail with it, because invariably you're going to mess something up. Someone's not going to respond to it. You should not be doing social media or marketing necessarily for the people's responses. You should be doing things to distribute content consistently, qualitatively, quantitatively.
Hey guys, this has been amazing, and I'm just watching the time because I know our listeners kind of expect us to finish up in a certain timeline, and I feel like we could talk with you guys forever. This has been a fantastic discussion, and we've covered things like gardens, juxtapositions, roadkill dioramas. It's been awesome, all in the midst of exploring storytelling together.
And that's
So I think we should wrap up now. For our listeners, I hope you've been able to take something valuable out of this today. And, if you're like me, take one thing away and actually put it into implementation so that you can learn something new and put it in place. But Lisa and Deevo, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. For our listeners and viewers, check out their podcast. It is outstanding. The one that you mentioned today about quantity and quality was an amazing one I listened to this week as well. So I don't know if you guys have any parting thoughts or ways that our listeners can connect with you. That would be great if you could share that.
Go ahead, Deevo.
I think, again, don't focus on the outcome, focus on the process, be original, add value, solve a problem, show up consistently.
I would say ditto to that. Exactly what I was going to say.
Awesome. Well, thank you to the Marketing Guides panel today, and thank you for Lisa and Deevo for joining us today. And everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.